Уважаемый господин Шваб,
Dear Mr. Schwab,
уважаемые господа,
ladies and gentlemen,
действительно позавчера в Москве
indeed, the day before yesterday
в международном аэропорту
in
Домодедово,
Moscow at International Domodedovo Airport, a terrorist act was committed
унесший жизни
that took
десятков ни в чем
lives
не
of
повинных людей.
dozens of innocent people.
От рук террористов погибли граждане разных стран.
Citizens of various countries fell victim to a terrorist act. Citizens of Russia, United Kingdom, Tajikistan, Ukraine,
Германии,
Germany,
Австрии,
Austria,
Киргизии.
Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan.
Пострадали более сотни человек.
More than 100 persons were injured. They are now at
Эта
hospitals.
трагедия стала
That tragedy
настоящим потрясением для
indeed
российского
shook the entire Russian
общества,
society,
что наша страна
although our country,
подвергалась испытаниям.
even in the
Она
past,
вызвала
was subjected
негодование во
to
всем
serious tests.
цивилизованном мире.
That act caused indignation throughout civilized world. I received numerous messages, telegrams, telephone calls from the leaders of foreign states, leaders of international organizations, expressing their condolences and solidarity. I am grateful for the condolences
За те слова, которые я
and
только
for
что
the
услышал от
words
вас
that I've just heard
и от других
from
участников
you
форума.
and from other participants in the forum.
Мы вместе скорбим.
Together we mourn the loss of life.
Боль от утраты
The
человеческих
pain
жизней,
from the
конечно,
loss
останется
of
в наших сердцах.
human lives, of course, will stay in our hearts for
Но
long.
случившееся только усилило
But
наше
what
общее
has
желание
happened
решимость найти
only
эффективную защиту
strengthened our resolve to find an effective protection against international terror. And I believe this to be of
Те
utmost
же, кто
importance.
совершил это злодеяние,
Those who committed that heinous act by aiming their blow against the citizens of various countries expected that their act would bring Russia to its knees, would force us to be defensive. They expected and hoped that the president of Russia will not come here to attend the forum, among other things, of course. This is the criteria used to choose the time and place for committing that act of terrorism, but they miscalculated. Russia is aware of its place in the world. Russia is aware of its responsibilities to its citizens and will comply with them, and its responsibility to the world community. This is the reason why on this day I'm speaking from this rostrum. Terrorism negates the most important thing, the value of human life. It tramples upon any rights and freedoms, no matter ideological rationale is. It generates fear and hatred. It is an obstacle to the efforts to improve our world. The situation is also dramatic in that the terrorist acts in a cardinal way disrupt the normal life, the normal current of life. And such acts very often force us to take very tough decisions. Those terrorist acts radically change the way of thinking, not those who fall victims, but also the way of thinking of everyone living on the planet. Unfortunately, no state in the world is immune to terrorism. The reality is such that terrorist acts like the one that has just happened in Russia, unfortunately not for the first time, can happen at any time and at any place in the world. No one is immune to that today. There are no universal recipes to combat that evil. But one thing can be said in a definitive way. Our success in countering this common threat depends very much on our solidarity and concerted action, particularly during the period when globalization has made our world much more interdependent than it was some time ago, and we have to enhance and build upon our efforts in our joint struggle against terrorism. We have to do all we can to influence, if not the ideology, then at least the social and economic roots of terrorism: poverty, unemployment, illiteracy, parentlessness. And we have to ensure that global development is stable, safe, and just and fair. Once again, let me sincerely thank you for the manifestation of your feelings. Our forum is conducted during the time when many tend to speak of the end of the world financial crisis. But at the same time, it's quite obvious that it is not all that simple. The period of extra rapid development has resulted in many people becoming euphoric, but the crisis has sobered up everyone. But we have coped with only one part of the symptoms of the crisis, and so far we have not found a model for growth, and the economic development therefore is bound to be slower than we would like it to be. At the same time, we have learned serious lessons not only from the economic experience. Present-day civilization technologically is well developed, at least if we compare it with what it was like 100 or 200 years ago. But one natural disaster or technological mistake would be enough for entire regions to be brought to the brink of environmental catastrophe, and continents would be cut off from each other as in previous centuries. The eruption of volcano in Iceland, major oil spill at Derek in the Gulf of Mexico, the anomalous heat in Russia last year, catastrophic floods and snowfalls that happened at various corners of the world, all these things make us think once again about the fragility of human power on Earth. I believe that further procrastination would be dangerous. And the thing is not only that we have to complete long-lasting climate talks, although that must be done by all means. What is at issue is also the establishment of a common monitoring system for the environment and hazardous facilities, and a common system for early warning and alleviation of emergencies. Russia has advanced that initiative, and I hope that our partners too will agree that this question is long overdue. Today we need very much new ideas capable of changing the world for the better. Ideas that would acquire the force of requirements to practical policy and would be a standard for states, for the business, for public development and relations between countries. Speaking of security, Russia some time ago expressed its specific proposals for concluding a new treaty on European security, and I believe that such topics can be discussed everywhere that would be useful, including here at the Economic Forum in Davos. Today, the actions by politicians, international relations, and the principles of settlement are lagging behind the technological developments. At the same time, some politicians, some people continue to live by the phantoms of Cold War, stereotypes of Cold War, and they are carried away by primitive ambitions, force ambitions. But during this particular time, a great amount of people, almost 1 billion people, let us think about, are using social networks. For the first time in the history of mankind, millennium-long history, people are communicating with each other directly, being located on various continents, and this is mind-boggling indeed. Our present-day world is ever becoming is becoming increasingly flat, and borders and barriers are expanded. Thanks to internet, people get united, and they are united by a single cause, a single idea. And no national government can claim to have full degree of influence on such communities. Perhaps that's for the better. Business also faces similar factors. But there is a dangerous dimension to these processes. Sometimes they serve as a very important instrument for extremists who fuel ethnic and religious hatred. They serve as an instrument for traffickers in drugs and armaments and for terrorists. These problems are getting worse, and we cannot fail to notice that. At the same time, the general interconnection should become a major boost for economic growth. Any attempts to cut off those ties, for example, attempts to limit the freedom of internet or the spread of innovation, I believe everyone would understand that, would result in stagnation for the world. Russia will not support initiatives that call in question the freedom in internet. Of course, freedom, which is based on the requirements of moral laws and legislation. Dear colleagues, our task is to use all the possibilities in order to make our new world a much more fair and just world, as believed by many citizens of our countries. A world where success will be determined much more by talent and work rather than by the place of birth or the family circumstances. A world where billions of people will be directly communicating with each other. A world where people are not afraid of authorities and international relations are free from double standards and hypocrisy. A world where it is much better and much more efficient to work together, to work jointly. All the more so since in many countries we have new generation of leaders that have come to power, a new generation that came into being after the end of the Cold War. And we, and I'm referring to Russia, can discuss and implement our dreams together. We are prepared and willing to do that. All that should compel us to move ahead towards a greater level of transparency and coordination. I believe that the positive trends, as referred to Mr. Schwab, in relations between Russia and the United States are good examples of new principles and approaches in international politics. And by the way, I'd like to remind you that yesterday our parliament definitively ratified the Treaty on the Limitation of Strategic Offensive Arms. In order to build such a world, we have to build upon a number of well-known principles. Some of them we sometimes forget about. There are a number of such principles, and I'll list them. First, it is a strategic long-term approach to addressing problems. Simple and often populist solutions in 90 cases out of 100 are wrong, or prove to be wrong, or perhaps even prove to be worst out of all the possible options. A vivid case in point is a tendency or trend to resolve economic problems through nationalization, including the nationalization of financial institutions. Indeed, in the period of financial crisis, many states paused to think about that, and many states took that option, including states with a well-developed liberal economy. Our economy is not developed well enough. I'm referring to the Russian economy, but we have exercise restraint, and we didn't resort to that option, and I believe we were right in doing that. I believe that in most cases, crises can be resolved through the efforts of private sectors, and in long-term perspective, this is the most effective way of dealing with things. Secondly, it's realism and willingness to live according to one's means. During the crisis, many bubbles were punctured, not just financial bubbles, but also the bubbles of complacency. I believe that everyone understands that we are not immune, we have no insurance against the emergence of new such bubbles. The right to risk is a part of free economy, but that right should be balanced by relevant responsibility. The right to excessive rights is something that entrepreneurs should have, citizens should have, and no doubt scientists should have that right, within reasonable limits, of course. But states cannot have that sort of right, or the world as a whole, the right to excessive risk. Present-day realities in many developed countries is such that they face the problems of sovereign debt, budget deficits, and, despite all of that, unwillingness to cut expenditures. Such a situation is fraught with new economic and political crises for the world. By the way, very indicative in that regard is the annual address by the President of the United States, addressed to the nation, which spoke of the five-year freeze on budget expenditures. This is a serious measure. Thirdly, I'm referring to global partnership and the right way to organize it. No matter how difficult it is to renounce the practice of individual or narrow group interests, that is something that needs to be done. The establishment of the G20, and I'm quite frank in saying that, is a major, huge step forward. On the one hand, the greater number of countries sitting around the round table, the more difficult it is to reach consensus, the more time is required. But on the other hand, the better decisions are that are being taken. And the experience of our work within G20 has demonstrated that. We are prepared to use all the instruments at our disposal. But the efficiency of work in the G20 should be enhanced. From general discussions, even if very interesting ones, we should proceed to the implementation of specific tasks. There are many such tasks ahead of us, and we have already achieved many things, many successes. We have determined the ways to develop world financial institutions, but still there are many things that we haven't done yet. And there is one topic to which I would like to refer right now, is as follows. I'm confident that the present principles are not working in the principles for regulation, particularly in the Internet, and that is fraught with a collapse for the entire intellectual property rights system. And therefore, I believe at the next G20 meeting, we should put that on the agenda and offer new solutions to the world community, solutions that should be formulated as international conventions. Russia will advance these proposals. At the same time, we should develop new alliances of leaders. It is important that the BRIC group, as modeled by economists some time ago, has acquired a huge credibility and the status of a realistic operating organization. At least we intend to expand our work in that format. Starting this year, South Africa is joining this format. Now it is BRICS, no longer BRIC, but BRICS. And these are countries that stand every chance to be the leaders for global development and to shoulder responsibility for that process. I believe that one of such ideas could be implemented in very shortly, that is to include the currencies of BRICS countries in the IMF SDR basket. And fourthly, it is diversity, the fact that various economic models exist, market economy exists in the world. It is rather an advantage than a disadvantage. The crisis has demonstrated that the models that were not perfect were shaken and suffered major losses. Therefore, one format world, no matter what the format is full of risk, and multi-format world is capable of compensating for such risks and provides an opportunity to adapt to new challenges. A few words about Russia. Russia is very often criticized. Sometimes the criticism is well-deserved, sometimes absolutely not. Russia is rebuked for the lack of democracy, authoritarian tendencies, the weaknesses of legal and judiciary systems. Today, we are the way we are. And let me tell you that Russia indeed faces many difficulties in building the rule of law, in creating modern state-of-the-art economy. Russia, in the highest degree, has been confronted with the evil of terrorism and extremism. Russia has many social problems to cope with, although in recent years we succeeded in resolving many of them. Finally, Russia, all the decision makers in Russia are not immune to ordinary mistakes. But one obvious thing should be understood. Indeed, major changes are taking place in public life, in our society. We are indeed developing and we are moving ahead, in particular in fighting corruption, in modernizing judiciary and law enforcement spheres, even though we have not yet scored tremendous successes in that area. Those are realistic attempts to improve investment climate in our country and to improve the quality of life in Russia. Indeed, we have not yet reached outstanding results in our efforts, but we are full of resolve to continue, to persevere. We are learning ourselves and we are willing to receive friendly advice. But what we don't need is lecturing. We should be working together. The feelings of people, their social self-esteem, perhaps is the most important indicator of how successful the country is developing. The conviction of the citizens that they live in a democratic state, an honest dialogue between authorities and the citizens are key signs of democracy, direct democracy. The quality of that democracy depends not only on political procedures and institutions, but also on whether people are prepared to listen and to heed. It is not enough to have one's own freedom. You have to respect the freedoms of others. This is the principle which is true for relations between democratic states. I'm also convinced that democracy will continue developing thanks to economic modernization. Primitive raw materials-based economy cannot ensure the improvement of life, the quality of life for citizens, and therefore it is not capable of ensuring the sustainability of our democracy. In order to avoid the threat of populism, democracy should have a safe base as a well-developed society, as a society of independent and independently minded people. Dear friends, the strategy for modernization of Russia and the principles that I have indicated are in full accord with what has been said. Today, I will dwell on new opportunities provided by modernization for successful business operation in Russia, despite all the difficulties. I'll be brief and enumerate 10 points. First, some time ago I initiated an unprecedented program in recent years, program for privatizing state assets. The number of strategic enterprises in Russia, according to under my degree, has been reduced by 500%. In the next 3 years, stocks of shares will be privatized for major companies. The revenues, obtaining revenues is not an end in itself for us, although of course that is an important goal. What is important is to increase the competitiveness of major companies and to improve the environment for business activities, and therefore in engaging in that activities, we involve the leading world banks. We also will set up a special fund for sharing the risks through joint investment in modernization projects in our economy. Third, we expect to receive major advantages from the development of the Russian financial sector. This is the reason why I'd like to once again announce in this room that we will not introduce any special taxes in the financial sector. On the contrary, as of January the 1st, we have abolished the tax on the selling of securities in carrying out long-term investment. In that respect, our position differs from the point of view of our partners in the G20. We have no intention to introduce any further limitations on financial activities. On the contrary, we would like to expand the possibilities for financial institutions. This is the objective of turning Moscow into a major international financial center. It should not only become a nucleus for Russian financial system, but also a catalyst for development of financial markets for the post-Soviet area and for the Central and Eastern Europe. First, initial practical steps have already been taken, and I hope that starting this year, foreign companies will be in a position to make loans and to attract capital in the Russian ruble market. This would be a part of Russian integration in the world economy. Let me add that we are taking measures to enhance the efficiency of our judiciary system for financial companies that will be working in the Moscow Financial Center. Fourth, we are setting up major markets with uniform regulation rules to make them attractive for investors. Russia is since long has been prepared to be admitted to WTO, and I hope that this process will be completed this year. All of our partners have promised that to me. After that, Russia would join OECD. Finally, we are working to establish a common economic area with the European Union. It will be based on the principles of indivisible security, freedom of movement of people, capitals and goods, based on uniform technical standards. Recently, we established a customs union with Belarus and Kazakhstan. We are also now building a common economic space, common economic area following European model. All these processes are of major significance. They are not in conflict with each other, but rather mutually supplementary. In other words, we are moving towards establishing a single market from the Atlantic to the Pacific, a major market where everyone will have advantages of working in. Fifth, we have established and continue to create new possibilities for innovative entrepreneurship and venture investment. I have suggested a new law be adopted that provides the universities with the rights to set up ventures enjoying intellectual property rights. This year, venture financing will be made even more convenient because legislation will be put in force. This year, major project of Skolkovo, Innovation Center of Skolkovo, will start operating. A great number of enterprises will be part of that project. They work in various parts of Russia, and they will all receive preferential treatment, and I expect that we can hope for the emergence of new global brands emerging in Russia in the next few years to come. And the involvement of foreign business, foreign innovative business will make our chances for success even greater. Sixth, further opportunities for business are being created by a large-scale program to ensure energy efficiency. I have approved some specific targets, and new pilot projects are being implemented in various parts of the countries. New projects should comply with the strictest standards of energy efficiency. Such standards have been already established or will soon be established. Of no less importance for Russia, taking into account its particular energy place in the world, for the energy sector to become a major booster for innovation. This is the objective why innovation and modernization will be carried out through global partnerships based on equity swaps. Furthermore, such partnerships will be a key factor in ensuring energy security, something that we spoke about at the G8 summit in St. Petersburg. Here today in Davos and some time ago in other forums, we signed major deals, major contracts during this year in this sector, and I hope that new alliances being built by Rosneft is a transfer from words to deeds in that direction. Seventh, we will take every advantage of the technology transfer mechanism to modernize Russian industry. Joint work and technology sharing is very important for all sectors, including the defense sector. I believe that in the future, technology transfers will help to create new level of security and mutual trust in the world. That's why we particularly welcome the establishment of the Russian-French consortium to build helicopter-carrying ships, Mistral class ships. Eighth, we are implementing large-scale programs to spread the broadband internet throughout Russia, and we're prepared to provide opportunities for any legal business to use these opportunities. The most important project implemented by state, a project that I'm also dealing with, is the integration of banking and public services based on universal payment cards. Development of payments is convenient for people, for our citizens, and it is a convenient thing for businesses. And also this is a serious instrument to fight corruption in our country. Ninth, we understand the success of modernization in Russia is a combination of tens of millions of personal success stories for our citizens and hundreds of thousands of success stories for businessmen and entrepreneurs and experts from the entire world. In the present-day world, the source of any country and its ability to lead in the world economy are clever, smart, well-educated persons who have the knowledge and have desire to work creatively. In the next 10 years to come, I believe thousands of our experts, bureaucrats, and specialists will obtain Master of Art and PhD degrees in the leading universities of the world, and later on, I hope they will take key positions in Russian business, in state administration, in science, and higher education. Our task is to turn Russia into a more attractive place for the best minds of the world. I believe this is a realistic task to attract thousands of best scientists, scholars, and engineers to work in our country. The inflow of foreign experts is needed for us to learn best practices and to create a good environment for the work of our experts. This is the reason why we are willing to unilaterally, automatically recognize diplomas and scientific degrees obtained in the leading universities of the world. Now we are working on the project in that area. Now we have improved the migration regime for highly skilled experts coming to our country. The business representative has asked me to do that, and I have done that. 10th. we have launched the implementation of large-scale infrastructure projects, including having obtained the right to host major international sports events. And this is not just a win of some people who like sports. This is a realistic chance for us to modernize the infrastructure. This was the reason why we did that, to make that infrastructure convenient for citizens, for businesses, for trade. All those projects will be based on private-public partnership. And of course, those projects are a way to develop individual regions of Russia. And accordingly, the possibility for people from various parts of the world to come and see Russia. And to understand at long last that Russia, despite all its difficulties, is an open country which has already become part of the world community. I hope very much that these 10 areas, perhaps I have bored you by enumerating them, but tomorrow perhaps those areas could be discussed in greater detail in session here with the involvement of members of our government of the Russian Federation present here in this room. To conclude, I cannot fail to what I said at the beginning of my statement. All our efforts to restore and further develop world economy would be futile if we fail to overcome, to defeat terrorism, extremism, and intolerance. If we fail to unite in order to eradicate that evil forever, the evil that is of greatest danger for all of mankind. And let me stress once again, our success on this road cannot be ensured by efforts of states alone. What we need is a broad-ranging dialogue with the various structures of civil society, expert communities. They are in position to play a major role in the education sphere, in advancing the ideals of tolerance and mutual understanding among various social groups. Regrettably, I am compelled to cut short my stay here at the Davos Forum, and tonight, right after this session, I immediately go back to Moscow. Thank you for your understanding.